Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Manchester City continued their unbeaten run in the Premier League, this time getting the better of Watford. How did they do it? Where did Watford go wrong? Don't worry, here are the interviews. We've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to briefly break down why Manchester City made easy work of Watford. So before we get into today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's video, we're basically going to briefly break down how Manchester City were able to make easy work at Watford. Watford did revive in the final 15 minutes of the second half. They did make it close, but this was about City. They were dominant throughout, very comfortable, built that 2-goal lead, possibly should have scored more goals. So let's break that down and see how Guardiola got the better of this Watford side. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at City, 4-3-3, 4-1-4-1, whatever you want to call it. Gabriel Jesus up front, out in wide areas, Sane and Mahrez. And in midfield, they were Bernardo Silva and David Silva ahead of Fernandinho. Then we get to Watford, more of a 4-5-1. They had Dini up front, Pereira and Success out in the wider areas, and they formed the midfield trio of Hughes, Doucouré, and Chalobah. So now let's get into how City were so dominant, where they found their strengths, and why Watford didn't stand a chance. Before we get into the multiple chances that Manchester City did create at Watford, let's look at the shapes. Let's see how both sides look to approach the game. Like I said, we have Watford in more of a 4-5-1 without the ball. They want to stop City's midfield from playing, but they were very poor and very lackadaisical throughout the game. We look at it, so many players on the City side have space to get onto the ball. That's a big problem. Number one, Fernandinho not being pressed. He was able to spread the ball at will, play forward passes, play it back, peg out diagonals. The same for the center backs in Company and Stones, able to switch the ball out into the wider players at will. And then we look to the midfielders. Bernardo mostly on the right, Silva mostly on the left. And then when you look at the fullbacks, obviously you have Delph, who's not really offering you that threat that Benjamin Mendy does, and Kyle Walker, who now at City isn't going forward and overlapping as often, sometimes providing shield by tucking in a bit narrow. And that was the key here. City wanted the 1v1s, but they also had different roles for both wide players. For Sane, they wanted him to run in behind Femenia whenever they got the opportunity, try to get him to combine with Silva. Mahrez, on the other hand, they wanted him to go 1v1 with Holebas at every opportunity. And the way that they were going to do that was that they were going to have Walker narrow to pull Pereira out, and they were going to have Bernardo occupy spaces to create that space for Mahrez to go 1v1 with Holebas. So when you look at it, basically it's very simple. If Walker's narrow, that forces out Pereira. If you have Bernardo pushing out a bit higher, Doucouré has to track him, and then you get the 1v1. If Bernardo moves out wide, then you have Mahrez move out a bit narrow as well, but they wanted Mahrez on that touch line, and that's what happened. So you saw often 3v3 out there, and the three players in those positions really trying to work out how they were going to get by them. There was one player in particular that kind of summed up what they were trying to do. You add Walker, get the ball narrow. Pereira now isn't going to jump to him, so that's key. What he does do now is that he switches the ball over to Mahrez that's holding the width. You have Holebas stepping to him. Then you have Bernardo instantly dart into that space to drag out Doucouré. What he does there now, Mahrez plays the pass to him, and Bernardo pulls back out. So when he pulls back out, he now has two of the markers there. When he's making the pull around, what we see is Walker drive into that space in behind Pereira. The ball Bernardo flicks into is into that right half space. The cross is cleared, but again, it just goes to show what they're trying to do. They're trying to create those overloads. They're trying to ensure that they could get that 1v1 with Mahrez. Mahrez on several occasions delivering dangerous crosses into the box. We'll get to that in a bit. There was one earlier on that just missed Silva, but that's what they wanted. If he wasn't running at Holebas 1v1, they wanted dangerous crosses delivered into the box, and that was key. On the left-hand side, they got a bit of a different threat. You have David Silva. He wants to pick up the ball in between the lines. He wants the ball in between Hughes and Success. Success was often trying to stick to Delph. It was a bit odd given the fact that Delph doesn't really offer you that threat. However, that's where he wanted it. If he wasn't getting it there, what he'd do is that he'd move in between Femenia and in between Kabasale. And what would happen there is that if he moves into that space, it frees up more space to switch the ball out to Leroy Sane if he wanted to go 1v1 with Femenia. But that is what they were trying to do. Like I said, we had diagonals from Fernandinho out to Sane. We had the center back switching the ball out to him. We had Delph switching the ball out to Mahrez. City were just moving the ball fluently, and Watford weren't getting close to them. They weren't pressing. That was a big problem. One opportunity that kind of sums up what City were trying to do down the left-hand side. You have Company step forward. He's able to play the pass in between Success and in between Hughes for Silva. Silva's able to turn, and again, no one picking him up in between Femenia and Kabasele for Jesus making that run across. However, when he does, he's on a tight angle, and he's only able to win a corner kick. But that is what City were trying to do in that spell. So when we look at it, they have the threat down the right-hand side trying to get Mahrez 1v1. They have the threat down the left trying to get Sane in behind, trying to get Silva to operate in these positions. So now let's get to some of the chances that they did create in the first half and see how they were able to implement those structural movements and the positional patterns that they did create into effect, and see how they were able to break down Watford in the first half. The first half chances stem with Pereira end up making a mistake in midfield. He plays a loose pass and it falls to Leroy Sane. Leroy Sane now is able to skip past Kabasele and drive past Cathcart and Femenia. He should break in and score, but he cuts it in left and he tries to chip Foster, and Foster makes the save. That stems from a loose pass. That stems from sloppy play from Watford. They weren't really doing a good job in midfield retaining the ball. They often tried to play, they couldn't play on the counterattack. That was a big issue for them. But when you can't play on the counterattack, when you don't have lots of possession, to give away the ball like that and concede a goal like that would have been a horrific showing for them. So that didn't happen. But again, it was a warning sign. We think to another opportunity with them. It goes to show that Fernandinho was having too much time and space on the ball. When we look at that chance, what we do see here is the positional play from that right-hand side, because it stems from that build-up play where Walker's cross was cleared. Mahrez continued his position, and Mahrez was in between Cathcart and he was in between Holebus, but Bernardo stuck to Holebus to ensure that he was occupied. What happens now is that Fernandinho gets the ball, no one picks him up, he's able to poke it into the path of Mahrez, who breaks free on goal. Luckily for Watford, Foster made the first save. Bernardo and David Silva both had opportunities, neither of them were able to score. Again, that is worrying. That goes to show what City were doing down the right-hand side was correct. And then when we get to the chances that lead to the goal, what stems from it? Well, you have Delph, who had success dropping off, then cutting back in. What happens here is Delph cuts in on Hughes. So he cuts in and he delivers the crossfield pass over to Mahrez. Now Mahrez has 1v1 with Holebus. Holebus doesn't want to get too tight on him because he's scared of the fact that he'll beat him on the first touch or perhaps the second. First cross that goes into the box, you see Hughes and Silva go for it, but Hughes is ahead of him, but Hughes misses it. It falls to Silva last minute. He doesn't have time to redirect it, but it does hit off him and it forces Foster into a save. Who's there? Walker's there to pick it up, bring it back to Mahrez. Now Mahrez locates another delicious cross into the box, falls to the far post. Femenia doesn't get to it. Sane is able to go across him and chest his effort into the net. That is what Manchester City were doing well. You see the diagonal ball from Delph after he cuts in to Mahrez. Two dangerous crosses. Watford had switched off on both occasions. That's a big worry sign. Another chance towards the end of the half shortly after the goal. Quick counterattack. Great work from Gabriel Jesus to hold off Cathcart, backheel the ball into Bernardo Silva, who clipped it over Holebus and Cathcart for Mahrez to break free. However, what we saw was that Kabasele was able to come across to ensure that Mahrez poked his effort into the side netting. But besides that, you saw different elements of how City were breaking down Watford, and Watford not really offering much in return. They had a Pereira shot that was bent inches wide from some sloppy defending from City in the early stages of the first half. They had a chance where Dini was able to get free on goal and direct an effort onto Ederson, but he saved it. But besides that, this was about City. They were breaking them down the flanks. They were getting too much space in midfield. That was a big problem. So let's get to the second half and see how Mahrez continued to harm Watford and what Watford tried to do to build them back into the game. City's onslaught continued in the second half, and it was led by Riyad Mahrez. However, it was Sane and it was Silva who created the first chance. You have Company switching the ball out to Sane. This is where the problem lies. Firmino gets too tight. You have Silva who comes across and he drags out Hughes, and what it does lead to is a simple 1-2 in behind. Silva pokes the ball in between the space. That is what Silva wants. He wants to combine with the wider players. He did this a lot with James Milner during his time at Manchester City, and then he's able to split the two midfielders, bypass them. It falls to Sane. However, his cross was cleared. It doesn't lead to a goal scoring opportunity, but just goes to show how quickly they can bypass opponents and how quickly Silva can get his teammates into dangerous positions. We look to the build up to the goal, how it does stem. It's such a silly goal to concede. It's a Firmino throw, success with a poor touch. Jesus picks it up. So Jesus picks it up and he drops it back to Sane, and you have Silva coming across. So he plays the ball to Silva, and what happens here now? Silva is able to locate that ball in between Firmino and in between Kabasale. So he plays it in between both of them, and what happens here now is that he's able to play that ball across the box to Mahrez, who is unmarked. He fires his effort past the keeper, no questions about it, beats Foster, and Mahrez continued to threaten on the counterattack on two occasions that should have led to something, but he was wasteful in the final third, possibly could have had better opportunities. We have the ball switched out to him, 1v1 with Holebas like he wants. He locates Bernardo Silva's run ahead of Cathcart. Bernardo flicks it on to Jesus, who is in behind Kabasale, but he nods his effort wide. Again, another great opportunity. The final opportunity that we look at for Mahrez is when he dispossesses Kina, who did come on as a substitute for Hughes, who came off injured. He's able to dispossess him. Gundogan, who came on for David Silva, is able to pick up the ball, slides it back to Mahrez, who cuts in on Holebas, cuts in on Cathcart, and forces Foster into a save. Throughout the second half, we saw Watford make changes. They brought on Kina, they brought on De La Feu, they brought on Gray. They went from 4-4-2 back to the 4-5-1, then back to the 4-4-2. It did give them a direct threat, and what ended up happening was the fact that the way they created goals was the fact they were obviously pushing men forward. De La Feu and Kina offered more verve in midfield and the attacking zones. Their best chances stem from De La Feu dispossessing and pressing the City players, and that's what we didn't see in the first half. He dispossessed Fernandinho, and that led to a Decore opportunity as they broke forward in transition. He dispossessed Delph as he pressed them. That led to the goal. But besides that, City had to cope in the final 15 minutes. They ended up bringing on Otamendi. That wasn't enough because when Gray came on, that was an additional striker. So they brought on Laporte, and they were able to see off the game. But this game was about Riyad Mahrez. He was the key man here. But City in the wide areas, they offered different threats. They were able to bypass Watford's wide zones, and the fact was that there wasn't enough pressure in midfield. They weren't compact, they weren't tight and organized or disciplined, and City were worthy winners here and remain at the top of the table, extending their gap with Liverpool until they play tomorrow. But let me know what you guys think. Can City go unbeaten? Who is going to beat them? And what about this Watford side? Started the season well, but now who knows where they'll fall in the table? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.